Well, it's a good evening here from Brisbane, Australia, and it's our Thursday night show. So obviously 7 o'clock here is 10 o'clock in the morning in the UK. We are co-host all the way directly straight up in the lovely pink. Andrena Forrest is going to take over the show and introduce us to our guest tonight. Andrena, all yours, mate.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody who's listening to the show, whether it's live or replay. To be honest, I don't even know what day it is today. We're 2nd of June, 2022. So I had the pleasure of going to the Better Way conference in Bath. I think it was 2 weekends ago now, 2 weekends ago now, where I was privileged to meet many amazing speakers. But one that caught my attention when I was upstairs, I could see these two crystal bowls under the table. As you know, my passion is sound. And anyway, they belong to Darren. So it's Darren Deojee. And so anyway, we've tried to find you many a time when we just didn't know who this person was. And there was all these different packets of different capsules on the table, and it said, this is for your adrenals and this is for energy, and take 3 of those free and help yourself. So there are all these packets, but we could never find who it belonged to until when we were on one of the days of the conference. You come up on the stage in this great beautiful Scottish outfit, and I thought, oh, there he is, now we know who Darren is. So without further ado, welcome and thank you so much for coming to be on the show. And it was lovely when we did touch base with you to have a chat with you. And we've got you gifted us your book, which is I have here. I've been reading through Sounds for the Soul, Volume 1. So I'm going to ask you, are you halfway through Volume 2?
I am in the midst of Volume 2. I mean, that was 12 years ago now, that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
and the reason I'm waiting for Volume 2 is that I'm going to be doing some of it with my children.
Oh.
And so I want to have some of the family harmonics in there as part of Volume 2. And there's new sounds and new words in Volume 2 as well. But it's been a while in the coming. I'm waiting for the younger ones to catch up on the harmonics there. But Volume 2 is on its way, that's for sure. Thank you.
Well, anyway, we're very privileged to have you on the show. So thank you for agreeing to be our guest. And I'd love you to share how you started in life, how the journey, because obviously you were born in Scotland.
Yes.
I think that could be the clue. So off you go.
Okay. Yeah, it would be a bit rude to be up there in a kilt if I didn't have the heritage. So yes, that is the Macintosh hunting tartan, which is my mother's side of the line. And the hunting variant is because I'm out hunting the ones. I'm out hunting for other living humans, when I'm out there talking. And that was why it's great when people like yourself come up and speak to me afterwards, because there's no substitute for connection, and it doesn't need any preamble. It's just a feeling, isn't it? So yeah, what got me started? Goodness me. So sound was actually the first thing I started sharing, even though I'm known for other things. But I've been out doing and teaching sound probably since about 2005. But I stopped doing it recently because I got more into law and politics and kind of gender work and things like that. But sound was the beginning. I mean, where did it begin for me? I mean, I'll be honest with you, it was in my teens. And I started to have, in my teens, I had the insight about spelling and how we spell all our words because all our words are spells. And it began for me then I remember I've got something from when I was about 12 years old writing about the nth dimension or something like that. But I remembered specifically noticing, first of all, about men. And I noticed that I was a really wounded boy. I had a lot of issues with men, trust issues and issues with masculinity. And I remember saying that here I am, a man, allegedly in a presser class, even though I didn't feel like I've done anything wrong. But there's places I can't go unless I wear certain clothes. And I was looking at it, and I was looking at the clothes that men have to wear to get into fancy establishments. And, I'm talking about suits and shirts and ties and all the rest of it. And I was just zooming in on these strange parts of this garment. And that is, the part around the neck and the part around the wrists. And so what do we call this part around the neck? Why is that called a collar? And why is the part around the wrists called cuffs? And why is it only the men who are collared and cuffed and wear a tie? And what is a collar and cuffs about? You know, and obviously, you know, it's the first spell I hacked around where we've been tricked by the fabric, we've been tricked by the context, and yet the words were telling us what was really going on there. And we live in a graded collar system across the world where we have blue collar, white collar, the church use a dog collar, all the police are known by their collar number, and it's right in our faces. And it was only the men that are collared, and even all the world leaders don't get out unless they're collared and cuffed. So I started digging into this. And of course, you can find out what people were wearing around their neck in the 16th century, get pictures of all the ruffs and all that sort of stuff. But you cannot find the origins of the collaring of the men. You know, there is no marker for that in any of our annals, really, and yet it's staring us in the face. So that was the beginning of both my gender journey and the journey deeper into spelling. And I noticed that really within the remit of spelling, I saw that it was the nub of so many issues, which was people were treating themselves less than they perhaps should, thinking of themselves less than they should, treating others perhaps less than they might like to, all as a result of something somebody said to them a long time ago. And then if we look at how we're all born as these amazing beings of tenacity and self-belief and courage and playfulness, and then we look at what people become as they're adults, you know, downtrodden, eyes downcast, shoulders slumped, given up on themselves, given up on the world in different ways. And I realized this is a spelling effect, which is you've got this amazing being of tenacity and awareness. It's here with amazing courage. And then just as a result of some words said to them, they start to take up less space, start to believe in themselves less, and just start to live less of a life. And I was like, wow, well, there is spelling. You know, when we talk about spelling as being a word or phrase of magical effect, I was like, well, that's a pretty magical effect where somebody can say something to you once, and then you would repeat that to yourself 10,000 times over. And they might have wanted you to feel bad once, and maybe you did, but then they maybe didn't expect you to feel bad for 25 years or longer afterwards. So I delved deeply into the spelling work at that point, and it took me deeper into sound. So I separated my work out, really. So when I got into law and activism, what I was really saying, people loved the work that I was bringing. And what I was saying was, yeah, this is great and it's effective and it's powerful. But if you think that's good, you want to see where that came from, because really spelling is where it's at. Understanding language, understanding how our inability to communicate with each other except through translation is one of the biggest obstacles in our connection as humans. But people were just too busy with being bothered by corruption, bothered by the state of their relationships, bothered by these things. They weren't seemingly interested or able to see the umbrella or the thing that was more upstream from all of this. So that's when I turned my attention to law and activism, and I stayed in that, and I stayed in the gender tranche and all the rest of it. But really and truly, sound, spelling, language evolution, all of these sorts of things are where I would rather be with people. But because of geopolitical concerns, fears of corruption, you know, the terrible state of people's relationships, that's why I've kind of become better known in both law, activism, and gender in recent years, because I've just given my attention to them.
Right. And
Yeah.
I like how you put on your sachets of and your wording, you put and you add the native instead of alternative.
That's right. This is new. Yeah. So so over the years, so one thing that's really bugged me right since the beginning of my own awakenings and my own personal realizations and gifts was that they don't have a name. When they come to you, they don't have a name. And I found that when I saw so many other people come to find something inside themselves that didn't have a name, they would go and get a certificate in something else that wasn't what they did. It wasn't their gift. They would go and get these certificates in other things. And I was like, I'm not doing that. and I stubbornly refused to pigeonhole or ban myself. Now, I did, you know, I taught in yoga studios, I've taught in spiritual camps, I've taught groups of mediums, I've worked with business executives and in corporate spheres, and all of these arenas using different banners that people recognize, but never really feeling they truly encompassed what I was about until recently, until the last couple of years, where I realized that so much of what was going on, people would consider themselves alternative, and they would say they were doing alternative things. And I realized that particular spell was pretty deadly. And that is, as soon as you call yourself alternative, you make yourself the smaller second choice, and you give away the center ground. You say that other people are doing the bigger thing, I'm doing the smaller thing, and you've done it by your own naming. You've called yourself the alternative. And I realized what was actually going on was that we disconnected Westerners were going through an unwittingly going through a healing process, and we were not alternative at all, but we were returning to being native. It was a restoration, a reclamation, a rediscovery of the nativity of the white Westerner, is what I was realizing was happening. And so that's the new sort of comfortable garments that I've put on, is realizing that actually, while I was trying out all these different things, really and truly, I was healing my sort of westernization. And it was when I was in Mexico recently, it really came, I got the language for it. So for years, in my background is the Toltec tradition, and I've been teaching what the Toltec perspective on the human plight for many years. And the Toltecs view it, and they call it a parasite, a mind parasite that humans have. Other natives call it the wetico, but it's very much my understanding and where I've been teaching from for many years is how we overcome this issue in our species. But recently I discovered that there's already a language for that, and that is the language of colonization. And for many years, I had been asking this question in my groups: why do Western people refer to Indigenous people without referring to themselves? Why do Western white people and Western educated people refer to natives without referring to themselves? Because if you're not native, what are you? If you're not Indigenous, then what are you on this planet? And obviously, the way the Toltecs teach about the parasite is that it has, because it is a visitor to us, it tricks us into thinking we are visitors, and it hijacks our mind, it hijacks our spirituality to believe that we're visitors, so that we check out of our interest in this place. So I've been teaching that for a while, but what I really got when I was in Mexico, which is where these pictures are from, my time with the Cheronese and their elders and council, was this realization that this is what the language of colonization was about. It was actually about the parasite, and it was about realizing its effect on us. Because if we look at how a parasite behaves, what it does is it keeps the host in a low state of well-being while it feeds on the cream. And because it has no understanding of the needs of the host, it accidentally destroys the environment the host is dependent on. And if we look at what happens in colonized lands, we see that this is what happens. And we see that what happens to the humans who live in that way is that they become anxious, depressed, self-loathing. They become mentally unwell. They become distracted and addicted. And yet these are the people who claim the higher truth. These are the people who claim to know what's going on, and they look down their noses at the so-called alternative law. And what I've realized is the so-called alternative law are Westerners naturally decolonizing. They're naturally healing the effect of this disconnection and disembodiment that we've all been born into and living through. And I know that seems completely out there to a lot of people, but I've been in this journey for many, many years, and I've found that what's been happening in the alternative scene is people trying on the garments of others, trying on the practices and traditions of others, based on this thing that I noticed. And it was that in Westerners, you have this notion that our culture is so corrupt that it has no authentic connection to the divine within it. There's nothing good left in it. So if we want something authentic and connecting, we have to import it or resurrect it. We have to dredge up ancient practices or get them from somebody else, because this has nothing good in it. And what I've discovered in my work and in witnessing others is that that's not true. There's many beautiful diamonds still in our culture that we've just forgotten how to use, spelling being one of them, as how we can use it as a genuine healing tool, a genuine tool to dissolve blocks and judgments and things like that. But back to the story of the sort of the native journey for me, as in realizing that rather than trying on the garments of others and then keeping them as mine. I mean, that was something I noticed with the Cheronese elders. They were so hungry to share cultural differences and share cultural practices, but they definitely did not want us to walk away wearing theirs as if they were ours. It definitely did not want that, you know. But what they were hungry for was for us to heal the disconnections that most natives recognize Westerners have, which is disconnection from spirit, with each other, the earth, and the ancestors being the big one. And what I found in my journey is that the reason Western people refer to Indigenous people without referring to themselves is because our bridge to the ancestors, to our own nativity, were burnt long ago, that we've forgotten. But it doesn't mean that we weren't also colonized, you know. And that's the thing, is that we can trace this back a very long way, but really and truly, we are all on this healing journey of returning home, which isn't to some sky fairy. It's returning home here, bringing the fruits of our spiritual connection and alignment, the fruits of our disembodiment, bringing them back home to here, so that we have a foundation, and you know, on the earth to share all these insights with each other. And I found that many people with their spiritual garments, what they're really doing is running away from the pain and the trauma and the difficulties of actually being a feeling human being, needing to deal with other imperfect human beings who might accidentally hurt you and not mean it. And, you know, it's much easier to run away from that than to be present and whole within it. But back to the story here. So, when I was working with some of the doctors recently and some of the various gardening things, I was trying to say to them, look, can you see that what you're doing isn't alternative medicine? This is native medicine. Can you see that what you're doing with this gardening and this permaculture, this isn't alternative, this is native gardening. But what you're doing is you're bringing back the fruits of your disconnection. You're bringing back the fruits of your objectivity to do it better. But if we can bring the humility and the humbleness of just being, well, look, we're just humans here trying to make it better. You know, there's no pomposity, there's no superiority, there's no fight, there's no elevation of self or others. And I find that that's something that can infect a lot of the other isms and alternative positions, is there's an elevation of self, a derogation of others. All this sort of stuff comes in. You know, I find in the so-called awakened crowd, they can be as derogatory of the so-called non-awakened as the colonized are of them. And I'm like, well, you're just you're just putting on different garments to do the same thing, you know. And you know, you're just taking the fight to a different, you know, you're as much divide and conquer as the other side is. Whereas by getting rid of the altar and just plugging into the native, it dissolves a lot of that, and we realize, so, you know, it's like, well, what do I mean by native? It's like, well, the first principle that I've noticed in natives is that natives are moved by unseen forces within and around them that are as real as the rocks and the trees. And when I look at all of the alternative scene, from everything from 5 rhythms dance to meditation and channeling and mediumship to all the rest of it, without question, every single individual I've come across has been moved by unseen forces within or around them. All of them have. Even if it's, you know, I mean, I love the image of the sort of corporate, middle-aged 5 rhythms dude who's coming out of the office and just discovering that, you know, he can kind of move like this and it feels good and all this sort of stuff. And to me, this is this real tender movement into humanity, into being human, into being moved by things that the colonized would view as foolish or worthless or derogatory or shameful, you know, but to really be able to reclaim these without guilt or shame and realize this is us moving into the fullness of being a feeling human. So my main thing at the minute is integrating this native position with the legal work that I've been doing over the years, by saying, because I've been working with people over the issues of really trying to claim human rights in the last decade, which is the right to self-determination, security and liberty of the person. Now, that's never been more relevant than under the times of COVID. And we've seen lots of people pressing for security and liberty of the person, self-determination. I want to choose. And that being seemingly denied under human rights. But here's the interesting thing is, everything that is asked for under human rights and unrealized is offered and realized under Indigenous rights. And what I'm doing in recent years, and what I'm inviting so-called alternative people, if they identify with perhaps realizing that they too are on the native journey, on the journey to full nativity of returning here, then perhaps that could work for them too. Now, the interesting thing here is that by moving under Indigenous rights, we come into alliance with the suffering and the effort of our native ancestral brothers and sisters who have done this work before us. You know, we come into alignment with the humility of Indigenous rights, but without the cap in hand nature that our darker skinned brothers and sisters had to put up with over the years, where they had to put up with shoddy parcels of land, put up with being derogated as a result of being natives. For us to reclaim that and come into alliance with it, it's really coming from this position, for me anyway. Like I said earlier, if we look at what happens to humans that live the way these people suggest and how unwell and sick and unhappy they become, it's like, well, from here on in, I refute your claim to the highest truth. I refute your claim that you actually know. I refute your scorn and your derogation, because to me, you're like a child in grandmother's cave. Because to me, all buildings are ancestor gifts. You know, they're all the tech of the ancestors to keep us sheltered and to keep us shaded, you know, as gifts from granny and granddad, so that we could worry about other things than having to fetch the water and smell our poo and build shelters. So what I see in these people scorning us and people like us is, you're like a child who's never left grandmother's cave, saying there's no wind, when we natives are outside with our hair blowing in the wind saying this is amazing and magical and stupendous out here. But why am I, in my own journey, feeling cap in hand, defensive, shameful, like I somehow have to account for the realness of what moves me to you, when, you know, look at what happens to people who live the way you think they should live. They suffer, they die, they kill themselves, they hate themselves. I refute your presumption that you have the highest truth. Now, for me, once we integrate that, and I really learned this from one of the Mexican elders that I met recently, and it was beautiful. I couldn't understand a word he said. What was beautiful, I really couldn't. It was, but the gravitas, the substance and his presence of where he was showing where colonization began in the heart and the head, and where he was so aware of where it began. Man, that guy's few minutes of embodied demonstration where I couldn't understand a word taught me more in 5 minutes than I've learned in 10 years on
Really?
how
Wow.
to keep this at bay in our minds, in terms of the defensiveness or the need to justify or explain that many of us might feel, so that we can feel credible or authoritative about what moves us. The need for that debate is over for me, because it's like, once you move under Indigenous rights, there's no legal debate, because the position is that when you have a native who is moved by unseen forces within and around them that are as real as the rocks and the trees, any other person who is not aware of those forces and has no sense of them, their projections, their presumptions, their transferences cannot be considered to be a true or complete understanding of what's going on. They cannot be considered to be so. And why do we feel the need to kind of fill in that picture for them? That's where I've been for so many years. Let me fill that picture in for you. Let me justify what moves me. Let me explain and prove that I am credible and that I'm not crazy and that I'm not mad and all that. But why? It's like you're trying to prove that you're not mad to somebody who we've just discovered is mad, you know, because actually they think it's good and healthy to promote that humans live in a way that makes them miserable, kill themselves, hate themselves, turn on each other. So why am I justifying myself to you? When you're ready to come and ask questions that are genuinely of interest, then I'll answer you. But if you're coming from some scornful position of, well, you prove yourself, then it's like, do you know what? I've got 2 words for you now, and they're not suitable for airing at this time of the
No,
day.
quite.
Exactly. But Indigenous rights is what gives us the buffer to do that. As soon as we are under this camp of a pretense at seeking colonial recognition, or it's seeking authority through the colonial mindset, then we're doomed to getting lost in their spelling patterns. And that's what I've seen over the years. There's so many people creating their alternative systems, their alternative countries, their alternative communities. I've been involved in lots of them. And every one of them has crafted their documents to be credible to the other side. And it's like exactly what you were saying before we kicked off here, Jeff. It's like we are not going to be speaking about the way in which they speak about things. This is taking this a step further and saying, I don't have to justify what I do, because until, you know, there is some level of demonstration that there's a human parity here, that there's a mutual respect, there's a mutual curiosity, then what's the point? We're basically offering up ammunition to just be chucked at us, which is exactly what we've seen happen. And I'm just not in that game anymore. I'm just not interested in playing it anymore. And this is a fairly new thing for me. And so you mentioned the sound earlier. I mean, I'm known in different camps for. One camp I'm known for the unusual way I teach sound, another one it's for language, another one it's for law and politics, another it's for gender. And in the past, I'd kept them all separate. And another one, it's for my supplements, my herbal blends that really do bring change for people and get them out of long-term ruts, get them off addicted substances, get them off mood and mental health meds. I'd kept them all separate over the last 10 years because I was seeking authority and credibility, you know, ashamed of what moved me, ashamed of being fully honest of what was really stirring me. And it's only in the last year and a bit that I've finally got this understanding of the thing that brings them all together. And that is this really humble thing of, do you know what? Maybe I'm just a native medicine man from these lands. And I've got medicine for the body that will help your body feel better if it's suffering. I've got medicine for your emotions and your gender that is really unusual and proven to work. Medicine for the mind through the language and the spelling work that I do. And the spirit is helped through that by having a smoother vessel to express through. So this is the kind of new position I'm finding myself in, but I'm finding it almost painful. You know, the pain of the humility of it, the pain of the banner of the dealing with the fact that others are just going to view this as some garment I'm putting on. And for me to own and know that it's not that, and I don't have to justify or defend or any of that, but it's the one thing I've come across that finally says all of these things can be offered at once, and I don't have to fragment them. I don't have to hide this part and that part, but only under an Indigenous position, only under a native position. And that's kept me quiet for a while, as I have not really known how to speak of it. It really doesn't have a shape yet. So you saw one of the first outings when I mentioned it at the World Council for Health talk a couple of weeks ago. And here we are in one of the ongoing early conversations about it, just as I explore this notion with other people who maybe haven't come across it before. And that is that maybe all of this so-called alternative, all of this so-called awakening is actually just about us going through a natural healing process. And I just want to tie this in with something Jeff said earlier as well about us not looking at things the way the other world, the old world looked at it. The powers that were are the powers that are fading. And I want to share something on that note that relates to this, if that's all right, if we have the time for it. And it relates to...
I just want to stop there because
yeah, sure. It's a new branch, so go on.
I just want to bridge the gap there because when you're talking there, I could really see, you know, they always say that the world is a stage. Yeah. So if I was God and I turned up on this planet as the director of the show, I said, Darren, mate, here's your script. Once you get on the stage and play this role, well, that's what you got to do. I mean, when you see our Hollywood actors and all that stuff, and they're just ordinary males and females, and they've gone and done their apprentice in this so-called world, and then they've been given a script and they've got to go there and show themselves, and then some director and producer says, oh, we'll put you on the show, and so they've got to get into character and play that role. That role might go for 3 months, it might go for 20 years, depending if it's Phantom of the Opera. Question is, you've got a lifetime of being Darren Deojee, and as a result, when are you going to open up the script and start playing your game?
Do you know what, Jeff, man, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. That is exactly it. That is exactly it. And I acknowledge that. And really, it's my own recent trauma work that has shown exactly why I've been hiding so much in recent years. And you're absolutely right. And it's like I was just saying to my partner the other day as I was just processing some of my childhood trauma that stopped me from showing up, that stopped me from going direct and being honest. And I was saying, you know, and she was saying, well, maybe it's all right. Maybe it's okay for you to continue just doing invites. And I said, well, if it was okay, it wouldn't be making me miserable for over a decade. And not only that, it's like, here I am knowing that I have tried and tested amazing testimonials for the gender work, the spelling work, the word work, the kind of the powders, all the rest of it. And here I am, knowing I have keys that can genuinely help alleviate suffering and help bring relief to people and help maybe box off some dead ends born of experience. How can I have that and keep it to myself? How is it fair to not offer this? You know, and just because of my traumas and shames and guilt of being attacked in the past as a child, then you know, how can I let that stop me? You know, and obviously the solution isn't there yet, because that's the way trauma work works. Is I'm only just becoming aware.
Darren,
but here we are.
Okay, I'm God. I'll give you the script. Okay, here's your show. So
Thanks,
you get
Dad.
in there, and now if you're replicated by being on the show, on the stage, and you've got the little earpiece in the ear there, and you've got the director saying, Darren, move 2 places to the right, open your mouth, and the words will flow. You know, so that's intuition. That's your inner voice coming to you.
That's what I do now.
So you
That's
see the
it.
symbolism where I'm saying, time for you to step up, do what you're doing. Boom, boom.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. You're one of many who's been saying that to me. And I really need to hear it. You know, I really, really need to hear that and take that in, because of the journey of being honest about my own frozenness in the past. I mean, people can go out there and you can find hundreds of videos of me that other people have filmed, but you'll only find a few that I've filmed. You'll find loads of other people that have put my content out, but you won't find me putting it out there. And it's just to do with those old wounds. And that is hopefully going to be changing as I go through this part of my healing and integration journey, really. But I thank you and appreciate that for Jeff, because you're right. And so as part of taking the mic and letting the words flow, I want to share with you some of an experience I had. One of my first major initiations with the planet happened in a shamanic training ground in North America. I didn't plan on this happening there, but it did happen, and I want to share it because it ties in with a different perspective on what's going on in the world right now, to do with planetary evolution and our role within it. And seeing as this is called Dreaming the New Dream and Sharing the Dream, when I used to run this as a talk, it was called Sharing the Earth Dream, and I felt it's appropriate here just to knit together the context of some of what I think we're going through. So some of you may have come across an author, an evolutionary biologist called Lyle Watson. He's very famous for his book Supernature. But his second book, Lifetide, is even more interesting. So that's called Lifetide. I recommend anyone look it up. It's a very well-referenced book. But it's a beautiful book that looks at the Gaia notion from a different perspective. And I'm using Lyle's words, but they tie in with exactly what my experience was, which is that, so us as spirits, as beings who are here, we kind of evolve by indwelling a form and kind of working out how to use it and become competent with it. Whereas planets provide forms for spirits to indwell. Planets they dream forth the forms for spirits to indwell. And the experience I had was what I called sharing the Earth's dream, which was the Earth kind of showed me, and Lyle's work ties in with this, is that human and other animal evolution is about becoming more skillful with a form. Whereas planetary evolution is about dreaming forth more complex forms out of its own planetary stuff. And what he was saying is that he's saying that tons of space dust and other materials come to the planet every day from all over the cosmos. And he's saying he studied these things that come from places thousands of times more organic than Earth. And they each contain within them codes and blueprints. And he was saying that when a planet has, so if we take in something that's not nice, then we can be sick or poo it out. Planets can't do that. They're supremely feminine in that they must integrate and assimilate whatever comes or be destroyed. And he was saying that this is where we used to have the notion of bad omens from comets and meteors, is that the pestilence or the plagues that would follow were the biosphere's response to this new material that had come in from space that the planet couldn't get rid of. But he was also saying that this seems to be the source of new forms, new complexities. And he was using the journey of the ice ages to paint the picture. He was saying that ice ages are like the planet's dream sequences, and that after each ice age, you could see new levels of complexity in the planetary forms. So we went from forms which were all kind of like, if you cut me open, long ago, you would find disorganized goo inside, you know, like slugs and scorpions and all the ancient creatures that are still here. They're all disorganized inside. And over time, through ice ages, it would become more and more organized and complex. Now, when a planet is given the human blueprint, so anybody who's had ET encounters, most of them will find it's with a humaniform type creature. What they don't realize is they're just encountering the human blueprint, but dreamed forth out of a different planet. But it's the same blueprint. Now, in the experience that was shared with me through the planet, what was shown was that there are known issues with the human blueprint. It spasms a lot with the energies that move through it as it comes online. Spasms a lot. There's loads of energies moving through something that can't deal with it. And that's kind of what's happened over the last sort of 10, 20 odd thousand years of our history. But then something happened, and this is what the Toltecs call the visitor, what some others call another kind of intervention. But something happened, and to me, this was the beginning of the collaring of the men, and it was probably about 10,000+ years ago. The beginning of the settlement of the cities, agricultural revolution, domestication of the animals. All these things happened in a similar window of time. This seems to tie in with when we stopped being hunter-gatherers as much, and we also stopped living as well a balanced lifestyle. Now, this seems to be when the wetico or the visitor or the parasite got to us. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have come across some of the other parasites that are known about in the world, like the cordyceps or the liver fluke. Now, what these things do is they exert selective mind control over their hosts. So, like, for example, the liver fluke will, at any point there is a cow around, an ant that is infected with the fluke will climb to the top of a blade of grass, so it will be eaten by the cow. Whenever a cow is not around, the ant is left to go about its business as normal. This is basically the way all parasites behave, and that is they trick the host into thinking it's it, and then the host thinks that its hungers and its behaviors are its. And that's what we've been living through in so many recent years, is people believing that these people with these insidious, horrendous, insatiable hunger are simply bad people. The native view on it is that they are infected. You know, the native perspective is that they are infected with something dangerous because they can't see that they're infected. Now, what we are living in right now is, so the whole awakening process, the wokeness, all the rest of it, as far as I'm concerned, is the natural healing and integration of this parasite by natural people, native humans. And what we're seeing is camps of humans, some which represent humans which are integrating and overcoming the parasite to restore their nativity and to become healthy earthlings again, and some which are succumbing to the parasite, succumbing to its hungers, succumbing to its visitor override. And what we'll see is, and we see this COVID has laid it bare, where there are two real camps here, and I call them I was calling them the natural human, but the native human and the techno human. And what you find is the techno human distrusts and is fearful of nature, wants to be sheltered from it as much as possible. They view the earth as dirty, and if they get the earth on them, they want to brush it off. Ugh, I'm dirty. I've got soil on me. Earthlings, natural creatures, don't view the earth as dirty. They don't try and avoid it. They don't try and spend all their time. In fact, it's the opposite. They want to try and spend as much time in their habitat as possible. What we also see with the techno-humans is that, so what if we look at the COVID situation, it's really fascinating because what we've got the native humans who want to accept natural selection, and they would rather accept the risks of natural selection than take the risks of the shot. And yet on the other camp, you've got the people who are scared of natural selection but are willing to take the risks of the shot. And that is basically they're willing to surrender to technological selection, but they're not willing to surrender to natural selection. And this is a huge split, because this is about who is your authority? Who do you surrender to? Who do you trust to see you through? You know, and what we find in natives is natives trust the unseen forces and are willing to take the gambles of life. The techno-humans are afraid of that. They're seeking to, perpetuate life. They view nature is being less than. So they're quite happy to plug bits of technology in. In fact, they want it. You know, you've got a lot of techno humans now. They want to replace their biotech arm with a robo arm because they think it's cooler. When it's like, well, you don't even know what this is capable of yet. You haven't even really unfurled this, and you want to plug this in. And you know, I hear a lot of people talking about AI, and to me, AI is not the computers. It's this, where what we have is, so if we look at computers, and again, COVID laid this bare. So if we look at computers, they are a tool. It's a diagnostic tool. It's a processing tool. So what you do is you're meant to put data in, and then take the data out and add it to your human senses to make a decision. What we're seeing with the techno humans is they're abandoning their senses, abandoning them completely, and only accepting what the computer tells them, only accepting as authority what comes from the screen, so that you can say to them, look, there's no piles of dead bodies. The undertakers are not busy. They have not got any queues. There are no backlogs in deaths and burials, all the rest of it. There's no excess deaths, all this sort of stuff. And these people, their senses are telling them that, but they're like, no, 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 no. I only accept what comes out of the computer. This is AI. It's an AI human. It looks intelligent, but it's taking its intelligence from an artificial source. It terrifies me, absolutely terrifies me that this is the you know, and that these are the people who claim to have the highest truth. So I've meandered quite a bit in this share there, but to wrap it all up, what I'm seeing happening here is, as part of the Earth Stream, we are the humans who are naturally healing and overcoming an infection that came here a long time ago. It's organic and natural. And we as the Westerners can ally with the woke movement and ally with the indigenous peoples by realizing that actually what we're doing is not creating new sky platform that's further away from all of them, but we're actually returning to stand with them. You know, we're as native, white, and mixed race Westerners who have healed this thing. And the COVID thing is revealing who those people are. Doesn't matter what the color of their skin is or what land they stand on, their choices in relation to COVID are revealing who their authority is and where they get their values from. And that is showing, I think, the people that we probably want to stand with and not with. But I'm going to leave it. That was my little caffeine 15-minute run through the Airstream there. But just a bit of a different perspective for some people there.
God, I thought you were talking about Stargate there with the parasites being the Gould.
I tell you what, mate, it's not far off. They are a multidimensional infection. There's multidimensional infection. And the thing here is the church did not invent evil. And the church did not invent the creator. And as we throw out our relationships with both evil and the creator, as we distance ourselves from the church, we throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we leave ourselves very, very vulnerable to forces that natives have a lot of awareness of. And we need to be very careful about what we throw out with the church. Yeah, the church had loads bad, but they didn't invent evil and they didn't invent the creator.
I mean, Andrena's got a good friend called Shakti, and she ended up with a tapeworm or something, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, parasite. Yeah, yeah.
It was 6 foot,
Honestly,
6 foot long, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is a great fractal to realize. So most people who have hungers don't realize most of those hungers are not theirs. It's not yours. So when you crave sugar and you think, oh, I fancy some sugar, that's not you. That is bacteria in your gut that favor sugar. If you cut sugar out of your diet, those bacteria will scream for a while and then they'll die off and you will no longer crave sugar because it is not your hunger. Certain other hungers are the same. And where do most people feel hungers and emptiness, hollowness, something to fill? It's all here, all in the gut, all in the biome, all in the first brain. Now, people don't realize that that is actually a brain there. The parasympathetic brain has been recognized. There are brain cells there. And when people think, they think it's this they're using. It's not. For most people, the thinking that they think is thought is coming from their gut. It's based on their hungers, their desires, their need, and their urge to fill their emptiness, which they feel here. And it's not until we feel whole with a W that we stop trying to feed the whole without a W, you know. But it's all down here, but people aren't aware that's not your hunger. And that's why detoxes work, because we starve the bacteria and the parasites that we house that are not ours, they get purged, and then we are like, oh, I don't want that thing anymore, because you never did.
So
And
what about?
I think the same applies to all the evil we see in the world. The people that like to do obscene things to kids, the people that like to really lord over power over others. That ain't really a human trait. I find it really interesting. I've had some real encounters with evil, real encounters with possession, real encounters with entities, and it did, and to me, I don't need to justify or explain that to people because my experiences are real and valid. And we have a saying that is ancient that shows we understand this, and the saying is, "What's got into you? What's got into you?"
Yeah.
Now, that's because we know in our ancestry that when we wander out in the woods at night as a solo human, that if you do not know yourself, then when a thought or a hunger pops up in your mind or in your belly and you're not aware of yourself, then you might just follow it. Oh, I want this, yeah. And then people aren't aware that they're vulnerable to the whispers. Do that, do this. They're just not aware. They become prey to the dark. And I find it also very interesting, since my encounters with possession and whatnot in others, I've noticed that in the past, if you look at some of the things that people have done in recent times, say like in Wales recently, there was a couple that out of nowhere randomly dismembered a teenage girl, completely dismembered her. They planned it. There's a lot of this kind of mad random act of real evil taking place in the world. And it's like, as a human, no matter how angry or curious you are, once you've started to saw off another human's limb and you're covered in the blood and it's all gushing and it's really all the glamour is out of it and you're dealing with a body in your hands and you're pulling the bits off it, what motivates you to continue? What is it that motivates you to continue? Now, we again have this in our ancestry. Now, what did people used to do hundreds of years ago when somebody would engage in a crime of great horror and obscenity that would cause natural, healthy people to recoil in disbelief and like, how, why? They would send them to a monastery. They would send them to a monastery because they would know this is beyond what we are used to dealing with. We don't know. And before there were churches, they would send them to the medicine people. They would send them to the medicine people saying, this person needs a cleanse because there is something here we don't know how to deal with. This is not about a human behavior. Something's got into this person and we don't know how to deal with it. And really, as we threw the baby out with the bathwater over evil, I mean, M. Scott Peck wrote a great book on this called People of the Lie, where he spoke about how, as we distance ourselves from the church, we threw the baby out with the bathwater over bad and evil, not realizing that bad and evil are not the same thing at all. So that, we view people who do incredibly insidious and dark things as just being bad. And it's like, well, when we look into that more, it's like something else is going on here. And until we come to terms with that and start to learn to deal with it, then we are allowing evil to walk side by side with us, tolerating it as if it was just some poorly behaved human, when that is not the case at all here. This is something way more insidious. I didn't expect this conversation to go there, but back to you guys.
No, we just go with the flow.
It really is flowing this morning, guys. But yes, okay.
Oh, we'll keep flowing.
We've got the parasite, we've got everything coming out here.
Oh, God, I had some questions. I've forgotten what they've gone now.
We haven't spoken about gender at all. This is amazing.
Oh, no.
Let's stay away from it. Let's keep in this flow.
Yeah. No. Amazing. I mean, yeah, and it resonates so much. And I love, it's like, we are natives and we need to get back to the roots of everything. So I see somebody's Andrew's asking about a detox, and I know for myself, I'm always hungry.
Yes.
And so I've been thinking about doing a detox.
The number one thing to deal with, because insatiability is something. So I've been mapping this for years, tracking it in myself and my own bad habits and watching it in others. I do believe that low-grade parasites have been weaponized and have been added to foods, and they create insatiability. If you do not eat the cheapest food, then you should be able to stay on top of it. But cheapest chocolates, cheapest other things will create insatiability. The number one thing I found that gets rid of it like that is something I consider to be a holy powder, and it is called diatomaceous earth.
All right, yeah.
Diatomaceous earth will get rid of insatiability in seconds. And it's a broad spectrum that's used in every industry in the world to kill parasites, every industry in the world. But what I first got onto it years ago with my daughter, who was, she was grumpy around food for whatever reason. She was only 2.5 at the time. She was just kicking up a fuss around food. And somebody said to me, do you know what? Those are some of the symptoms of parasites, where the body can't say what's wrong with it. But if you've got restless sleep, grumpiness around food, things like this, it could be a sign of parasites. Try this. So when I read the description, I was like, that's a bit, I've got some of that. So maybe I'll try some of this too. And I gave a little bit to my daughter, and I had some myself. And I'm quite sensitive to things that go through me. And I noticed a resonant effect from this substance that was like a bell going off in my head in seconds. And I was like, wait a minute, this hasn't got to my stomach yet. How can it be having an effect? How can I notice an effect from this? And I realized it was a resonant effect, and it was the same in my daughter. And sure enough, 2 hours later, she was back to her normal self again. So for insatiability, I highly recommend diatomaceous earth. Just for a few days, it's all you need. It's quite a cheap powder. It's a fossilized, single-celled algae. And when you look at it under the microscope, it looks like stained glass. It's an amazing substance, yes. And there's a few places, and it's literally used in every industry in the world for killing parasites. But they say it's not safe for humans to take internally, and yet we feed it to chickens, cows, pigs. We use it to keep the chicken cages clean. You can use it on plants. You can use it on animals. You can use it to keep ants at bay. It's used to filter swimming pools. It's used in every industry, but they say humans shouldn't take it. And I tell you what, it's an amazing substance, and it's very cheap and affordable. So I recommend anybody dealing with insatiability, diatomaceous earth is the #1 thing for that.
And you know what?
Go on.
You still got some, Jeff?
Of course you do. If you're a chicken farmer, you'll have some. Now, there's different grades.
Hang on. My mate Tina owns this company, Diatomaceous Earth Online.com. Not only that, I import all the containers for her.
So you've been right next to it the whole time, Jeff. I consider that a holy powder. I don't say that lightly. I use it in all of my magical work, and when I'm out working in nature, I prize it as highly as really good quality salt and other crystal substances. DE is right up there for me. So yeah, I recommend that for all natives. Add it to your repertoire. It really is a powerful thing. And in terms of other things, anybody who is struggling with mood, motivation, energy, hormone balancings, all the rest of it, I highly recommend that you look at the essential amino acids or the indispensable amino acids. Most people target vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. Well, I'll tell you what, our dry body weight, we're only 2.5% vitamin and mineral. We're 75% amino acid. And everybody thinks that if you cover protein, you've got it covered. That is the biggest nutritional bait and switch that has led to depression and misery that I've ever heard. And actually, the term essential or indispensable is the medical name for a subset of amino acids that most people know nothing about. And yet they are the very ones that your body cannot make at all unless you get them from diet. And if you don't get them, you will be deficient. And the thing about them is we think protein is, it's muscle and energy. It is not. Protein is all neurotransmitters, all hormones, and all muscle and all the rest of it as well, and energy. But all of our mood, motivation, hormonal balance, all the rest of it is based on enough essential amino acids, and most people do not target them, and they are the core part of my recipes that get people out of long-term ruts, get them off mood and mental health meds, get them off their daily booze and things like that, is by realizing that for a lot of people, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I've got all these things I want to do, but why am I not doing them? It's because I'm not good enough. It's because of the state of the world. It's because I'm just crap or whatever. And what I found is that's not true, mate. It's that your body would love to do those things, but you're not giving it the building blocks so that it can do it. So, and one little thread that ties in with this that is vital to understand the catastrophic anxiety and depression pandemic of the last generation and a half is glyphosate. So you've all heard of glyphosate, I'm sure, from Monsanto. Glyphosate is obviously, we know it's evil beyond measure, but it's also evil because it actually... So there's a thing in glyphosate where it targets a thing called the shitamaki pathway in plants. And what it does is it affects the plant's ability to synthesize 2 essential amino acids, 2 of them. And those 2, one of them is called phenylalanine and the other one is called tryptophan. And both of those govern mood. You get dopamine, which is the drive to get up and do things, from phenylalanine. You get the feel good of a job well done, which is a hormone called serotonin. It's biologically impossible to feel good about yourself without serotonin, and it's biologically impossible to have enough serotonin without enough tryptophan in your diet. Biologically impossible. You cannot feel good enough about yourself, no matter what spiritual work you do, no matter how much you meditate. If you've not got enough tryptophan in your diet, it's biologically impossible to feel good about yourself. And you'll likely have disturbed sleep. You'll likely have anxiety nerves as well. Now, the thing is, glyphosate interferes with. Now, people said it first, but humans don't have the Shitamaki pathway, so it doesn't matter for them. But it's turned out that in recent years, 15% of our gut bacteria does have this pathway. And so it's quite possible that the rise in celiac disease and all this sort of stuff is possibly directly related to glyphosate's impact in the gut long term. But specifically around mood, motivation, anxiety, depression, it's very likely, by all the research that I've done, that the glyphosate role on this pathway has affected our ability to get tryptophan and phenylalanine from the plants that would naturally give it to us. And the 2 things that would be impacted by that would be your drive and your motivation and your ability to feel good about yourself. So if in the last 45 years you've come across this issue, not feeling good enough about yourself and not having much drive and motivation, please look at the essential amino acids. So I do a blend that is based on, because a lot of blends are out there, but they're based on athletes and bodybuilders and how they would balance the amino acids. Whereas the blend that I've done is based on what the human body actually uses. And you can get that at brightpresence.co.uk. That's my little fragmented brand that covers it, Bright Presence. Oh, maybe I shouldn't mention that. But
No, slow down. What was it called?
No, that's my Scottish speed.
Yeah.
Bright Presence.
Bright
.co.uk.
presence.
Yes, because that's what it gives you. You become a bright presence when you've been feeling miserable.
Or I could do with some of that today.
Yeah, I've got a few blends on there for people to try. So I've got one that targets the essential amino acids, and I've now got another new one that I've done after working with all these doctors over the last couple of years. That is an immunity and anti-aging blend. But people can see that on the website. For most people, I would say if you've not looked at the essential amino acids, but you've done your vitamins and your minerals and you're still not feeling great, please look at them. Take your tryptophan separately, have that at night, because you shouldn't mix your dopamine producers and your serotonin producers at the same time, because one of them is the drive to do stuff. The other one is the reward for having achieved something. So stagger them. Take your blend of essential amino acids in the morning on an empty stomach, have your tryptophan late at night. And anybody who has sleep disturbance, poor sleep, or if you wake up feeling tired, 1 dose of tryptophan could sort that out for you. And I'm not even joking. It's amazing. Anybody who's on SSRIs. So SSRIs are the most common mental health med out there. That stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And what it does is it cycles the tiny amount of serotonin that these people have in their brain. And it's like, please, can we not do that? Can we just give your body the building block of serotonin and let it make it, instead of pretending like it's got enough, which it doesn't, and then giving you some medication to cycle that tiny amount. It's just an absolute tragedy that most doctors do not have an awareness of the indispensable amino acids, when indispensable is the medical term for them. It just blows me away. I could talk about supplements for a while as well, because they made a big difference in my life. But the way I look at it is that there's like a graphic equalizer of self. And most people, we've all done it. We kind of look to compensate for our weaknesses with our strengths. And we can get away with that in our 20s and maybe our 30s or something like that. But the time comes when we realize we have to balance the whole spectrum of self. And it's like, yeah, you can meditate and do all the spiritual work, but at some point you're going to have to do the emotional work. And all right, you've done the emotional work, but at some point you're going to have to do the mental work, you know. And this is about the body. And it's like, you know, you can be as disconnected from the world as you want and be in all spiritual la la land, but if you don't tend to the needs of the body, then it is going to fail you earlier than you would like it to. And it's not going to and it's not going to be through any fault of its own. It's going to be because you neglected that part of the graphic equalizer. And so for me, in these times, in the past, when people were talking about supplementation as being a con, I would have agreed. But now, through my understanding of soil depletion, impact of glyphosate, these things tell us that it's actually a wise thing to do in these transitional times, because the stuff that we're being offered in the shops is not enough to actually make us thrive. You know, it's enough to tick us over, but it's well known in nutritional circles that a lot of the obesity that we see these days is because people are bulk rich, nutrient starved. So they're eating lots of food, but the food just doesn't have the nutrients in it. And there's science behind this. The science is mind-boggling. In the UK, they started monitoring the nutrient levels in food at the end of the Victorian era, because they noticed that, well, they didn't notice, it was a fact that there was an iodine crisis across Europe, iodine deficiency across 40 nations, because there was no iodine left in the soil. We had drained it all by then through intensive farming up until the end, like the late end of the 19th century. So at that point, we started to monitor the nutrient levels in food, and in the first across the 20th century, it plummeted. So that by the time we got to 1992, we had to eat 8 oranges to get the amount of vitamin A that our grandparents got from one.
God.
I mean, and that was in 1992, and this is hard science. It's like, this is proven. And yet people think, oh, I'm eating healthy, I'm eating all the rest of it, why do I still feel crap? And it's like, well, because it's just not got the building blocks in it. It's why it doesn't taste as good as it used to. So, you know, the key with nutrition really is to look for nutrient dense sources, people that have already regenerated the soil before they start taking from it again. And if you're not getting from that source, which is the ideal, to maybe look at supplementing as a wise choice.
Brilliant.
Where on your website's your products?
Brightpresence.co.uk. They're all my products. They're all my blends. Yeah.
Put it in the private chat so I can grab it.
I will.
What'd you call it? Bright
Presence. In here. Yeah, there we go. Brightpresence.co.uk.
Not presents as in gift present.
Not as in gift, as in being here. But it is a gift if you give it to somebody.
Exactly.
We have to bright presence as well. Yes.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, since I've been back in the UK, which is what, 2.5 years now, the food compared to what I was eating in Australia, oh my God, I've really struggled with food here, and there's no, the quality, and you know, like you'd pick up tomatoes, you know, in sunny places, and the smell here, they got no smell. You open them up, they're blooming hard. And I used to love mangoes, and mangoes in Australia, the juice just runs down them. Here, I bought one, and they're like green bullets.
That's
you know?
right.
Oh, and I think
we don't have anything sun ripened here other than things that come from here. And the thing is, the vast amount of nutrients actually get developed in the very end of the fruiting stage. And it's right at the very end that it gets all those nutrients. So when we harvest when they're unripe and do this fake ripening over time, they just don't have the nutrient density they're supposed to have. Yeah, I mean, I was in Mexico recently, and I had exactly the same thing. I had all these amazing sun-ripened fruits, and I came back and I was like, I don't want to eat one of these bananas. I'm just going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Same with the mangoes. I agree with you. Mangoes. I mean, a sun-ripened mango is just something, but But then the thing we have to do here is, that shows you the website's out of date there. Yeah, April, I need to update that one. Yes. But yeah, getting sun-ripened stuff here, and this is where eating local does have its benefits. It maybe isn't as good as that sun-ripened mango, but if it's been able to reach its full growth cycle, then you're at least going to get the nutrient profile.
You can't even bite it. It's so hard. Like,
I know. You know, exactly.
I don't think it's never reached its cycle. It's gone beyond that.
Exactly, and it never can. It'll never do it. So it'll look like the food, and it might taste a little bit like it, but you're not going to get the density from it. That's a good thing that goes through all the stuff I was talking about, soil depletion, and about how reasons why we might want to supplement as a wise choice in these days. And again, one day we will get to the stage where we can trust our food sources. Anyone who's allotmenting and doing all the rest of it, obviously that's the best you can do for yourself. But just anyone who's not, or who thinks it's all a pile of rubbish, it really isn't. Once you look at the science of soil depletion and the issues of nutrients in foods.
Yeah,
No, the lady, wasn't it, Sandra?
Oh yeah, with fungi.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was amazing explaining about why you need fungi. She was on our show 2 weeks ago, and her passion is, she just oozes passion about fungi. Absolutely amazing. She teaches it and breathes it, lives it. And she, even when we interviewed her, she was sat in the dark. I said, "You're just like sat there like a fungi yourself."
Well, they're an amazing thing because they are the flowers of the dark. You know, they're the fruits of the dark, and normally we get everything from the sun, so they have a really important role that nothing else can substitute. Because they're the flowers from the night.
I tell you what, I've got that Celtic sea salt. That's the best salt you can ever
It's
get.
the best salt, isn't it? I mean, I was on the Himalayan stuff for years, but once I got the Celtic sea, there's no going
I got
back.
that one as well.
No going back. It's the best. It just immediately, you can just feel it immediately assimilate, can't you? It just dissolves in the body straight away. It's so nutritious. I love it.
Have I got some there?
I carry mine with me everywhere. I've got a bag in my bag. Yeah.
I got, wait a minute, where are we? There's my
stuff. And do you know what's so unusual about it compared to other salts? It's because it's got the magnesium in it, and that's what makes it the grey color. And all other salts get the magnesium taken out of it. So, but it does make it makes it retain a little bit of dampness, and some people don't like that. But suck it up; it's worth it.
Yeah, I'll take some extras.
So obviously our audience is in Australia as well as the UK and other countries there. So the prices on there, of course, are in UK pounds. So you do I mean, the international global logistics is
awful,
behind the eight ball. So
So on that note, I mean, for anyone on the show, I'm going to give them a code. You can use the code 15 off to get 15% off any order. Just to help with that, but postage wise, I agree. So the thing here is you can get essential amino acids in your own country. So, you know, of course, I'd love you to use my blend, but I recognize the postage charges are crazy. Please do feel free to, you know, just get something local, get something nearby and give it a try, see if it helps. And the ones to target is either an essential amino acid blend or go after tryptophan, phenylalanine, and tyrosine. They're your main dopamine and serotonin producers. The rest of them will benefit you greatly, especially if you've got aches and pains, joint ache, arthritis, hormonal issues. Then I would recommend you go for a full essential amino acid spectrum blend. And my little blend there, you can see oomph. My oomph has got some extra hormonal stuff in it.
I could do with some oomph.
I mean, I called it that because exactly that. It's oomph. It's hormonal balance and amino acids, that one. I do like that.
Right. Do you I was taught I'll speak to you after about a couple of things. But do you get anything to do with like yam powder? Have you got anything like that?
No, because so many other people cover those bases. I try and just stay focused on things that others don't do or draw attention to. So I've got my three main areas. So amino acids is one of my main areas. So I have an essential amino acid blend. I then have the hormonal blend that goes with that, but it's still an amino acid base. I have the immune blend, which is really, I mean, the results I've had from that, from people with long-standing problems, they literally disappear overnight. And it's because it's a broad spectrum antioxidant blend. And I mean, I was surprised by its impact myself. Sometimes I've just had to accept the fact that I can't claim credit for where it's intuition just says, here, put that in there. All right, I'll put that in there. And then this person gets better overnight. I mean, I've literally had that with the Immuni Plus blend. We've had people with long COVID problems, vaccine problems, people with just normal aches and pains, or even just coming in with a cold and it just disappears overnight with this stuff. So that's the immune and anti-aging blend. And then the other one is a biome blend for the gut microbiome, because I discovered that, so as I said, tryptophan is where our body makes serotonin, and 10% of it is in the brain, and that's where if we take tryptophan or something like that, that tends to be for the brain. But 90% of your body's serotonin is in the gut. So 90% of your biological ability to feel good about yourself is in your gut biome. And if you're not eating good foods to support good bacteria, again, it's not biologically possible. It's literally biologically not possible to feel good about yourself. And this is why people often don't feel good after they've had a binge. So if you binge on ice cream the night before in a movie, you binge on a bunch of sweets or whatever, and you wake up and you don't feel that good, because you biologically can't. You've destabilized the serotonin balance in the gut. So I've got a thing called Biome Back that is really quite effective in helping bring profound well-being in the gut. And I've found that anyone struggling with food choices or food cravings, getting Biome Back or another good quality pro-postbiotic blend will really help you deal with your cravings, as in, so you don't have to do a lot of the legwork. So within 1 week of taking Biome Back, I've seen people have their food choices profoundly affected without having to do any willpower work. It just happens because you've changed the voices that are hungry in your stomach. You've literally changed the ones that are clamoring and saying, I want this. This is what pro and postbiotics do, is they help change the voices coming from your gut. So anyone with craving problems or gut distress, getting a good quality pro postbiotic blend can work wonders, and it will affect your well-being, as in how easily you can sit in yourself, how much agitation or restlessness you feel just on a moment-to-moment basis is actually governed by your gut. I mean, it seems mind-boggling, but it's just how it is. And so I recommend anyone try these things if you're struggling with any of the things that I've mentioned, because so many people I've met in my one-to-one and group work believe that they have these feelings, anxiety, depression, blah, 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 because of a personality deficit, because they've not done enough work, because they're not good enough, because the forces in the world are just so strong that they feel so helpless against them. It's like, it's not that. Your tenacious, amazing animal can stand up to all of those things if you give it what it needs to feel like it can be in its homeland.
Brilliant. So I know when I was at the conference, well, Carol and I, you had different sachets open on the table, and it says take 3 of these or have 2 of these, and you had all these different packets open. I mean, we didn't really know what we were taking. We just, we had a couple of these and a couple of those. But then I know right at the end you gave us some to try, and I know Carol said she felt she could feel the benefit of it, and we didn't know what we'd been taking.
Well, you had the immune blend and the amino acid blend. Those were the 2 that I was just giving away there, and I gave them away because most people will feel it on the first dose. If they've got any deficiencies, they will feel it. Oh, Andrew, is Yakult useful? Good question. I don't know. I have found that a lot of these, because the problem with actual probiotics is, do they survive the gut? And so what you want to look at on your Yakult or your Danone or whatever other ones you might be using is you want to find something that is guaranteed to reach the gut intact. And if they don't have that guarantee on it, then yes, there might be bacteria in that drink, but your stomach is going to kill it. Your stomach acid is going to kill it as you digest it. Whereas what you find is the ones which are guaranteed to reach the gut usually are housed in something else, basically an oil or a fat or something like that, that allows it to survive the stomach, so that but then be digested by the gut, and it then allows the bacteria to become online in the gut. I would say if you've been using Yakult and you or any of those products and you don't notice a difference in about a week or so, then it's probably not a high enough dose for your gut needs. And there's 3 types of biotics now. You're kind of meant to now call them live gut bacteria, but really they come from 3 categories. There's prebiotics, which is your fiber. So things like your psyllium husks, plant fiber, things like that. The reason they're called prebiotic is that they are, you don't want them. Your body can't use them, but the healthy gut bacteria can use them. So really, when we're talking about plant fiber and having fiber in your diet, that is literally just to feed good bacteria in your stomach. That's all. It's not really got a nutritional benefit for yourself, but it's so that you can have this better balance in the gut. Then you have what used to be called probiotic, which is just the live bacteria itself, which is where what you're doing then is you're accelerating your gut, tricking it into believing that you've been on a really healthy diet for ages. So that's what a probiotic does, is it gives you an accelerated kind of amount of bacteria. So your body's like, oh, it's as if I've had a really healthy diet that's got all these bacteria in it for months and months and months, but I can accelerate that process by taking the probiotic. And the postbiotic is a new thing. And that's what I've got in my blend. I've really found that quite profound. And basically, postbiotics is probiotic poo. And it literally is that. But it turns out our gut loves it. And again, it's the same thing as the probiotics. It gives our gut the experience of having had a healthy bacterial colony for a long time. And so it massively accelerates that ability to drown out negative cravings and increase the sense of ease in the colon and in the biome. And that's why a combination will give you accelerated results. So I get amazing feedback on the Biome Back blend because it is a pro and postbiotic blend. So it really accelerates the gut's experience of you having had a large, healthy colony for a good while.
So where do you make your, or have you got somewhere where they make them and put them all together?
We make them. Yeah, we make them. I have a unit here. Yeah, I have an actual business. I've got staff and all that sort of stuff now. That business has really been flying because I have other companies that sell my blends under their name as well. So they sell my recipes, but under other companies' names. So we produce for them too. So Andrew, good question. I'll do that in a second. Fasting advice. So I have that as a business just locally, actually. So I have a unit here, and I must admit that's been a disaster for the rest of my work. I didn't realize what a light industrial setup was as we scaled this business up. And so I would have done a lot more spelling, gender, language, spiritual work in the last couple of years if I hadn't been utterly immersed in a light industrial learning curve, which I would rather not be on.
Hey, what I want to talk to you about.
Did you want permission to speak?
I'm the boss. I can mute you.
You'll be sorry.
Hey,
feel the power.
Feel the power. That's right. Hey, I have to go. Oh, Bewitched. What's her name? Samantha.
Yes, Bewitched. Yeah. I love that show. Yes.
Hey, the biggest addiction on this planet today in the Western world is coffee. What's the story there? What's out of those amino acids? Why is our body putting coffee into its system? I mean,
yeah. Do you know why that is?
You talk about the brain. You talk about the brain, and people actually say, "Oh, I'm going with my gut instinct."
Yeah.
I'm just saying, is there two questions in that? What I've just said, or is there one?
Yes, gut instinct is separate from, and the thing is, when we've got a polluted gut with lots of different competing voices in it, our gut instinct isn't really well calibrated and can't really be, but as we get better with our gut, it can really mean something to feel something in your guts and to really know it, so there's a figure of speech around it, but then there's the reality of what it is to feel it in your guts, which is a real visceral experience. But on this question of coffee, it's a really good point, and I might as well give your audience the credit by going as far upstream as I can on here, rather than dealing with some of the downstream fires that relate to the caffeine issue. And it's not just caffeine, it's other stimulants as well, really. We're an overstimulated population. And it goes right back to infancy for most of us. And what most people are not aware of is I do a lot of perception work as well. So we can open up other modes of perception, kind of like walking between perceptual worlds, really. And through this work, it helps people realize that our culture is such that from infancy, people spend most of their time in fight or flight. And they're in a fight or flight animal response most of the time because they've never really been welcomed into the world with great ease in a place where their feelings, and I'm talking about from real infancy, so we're talking about the wild feelings of the child, the wild unskillfulness of the toddler. When that is not welcomed, what it starts to do is create disembodiment, and it starts to create agitation and restlessness around where is it safe to feel? Where is there? And this is where trauma origins is, that we freeze up and lock up and say, I'll process that later, and we never get back to it later. And we get compounded frozenness as a result of a whole bunch of feelings that never, ever get to move. So we never return to true ease. And we maintain a state of distraction, agitation, activity, which is really to block the organic process that happens when we sit still, which is the stuff that's stored in the body wants to come up to be released. It's a natural process that how we really feel is going to come up. And so what people do is they maintain their distractions and their habits to not be present with how they really feel as avoidance strategies. And caffeine is the thing that governs that. It allows them to maintain a more active sense of fight or flight and a more seeming alertness, seeming greater skill in the fight or flight arena. So it makes them feel more competent and capable. And yeah, now I'm on it because I've had my coffee. And it's because the whole of that colonized culture is based on fight or flight. And we see it in so many of the ways people interact. So one of the things I've discovered in the men's work that I do, so I do men's retreats and rites of passage that have been I've been called better than the Mankind Project. So the Mankind Project is #1 in the world right now, and we've been told our process is better than theirs by a million miles. Yeah, there's plenty of reviews and stuff on there, and there's other ones on the YouTube channel. And what I've discovered through that work is that when we talk about the human rising above the animal, as in, because we are animal, we have animal origin, as in, this form is an animal, regardless of what you want to think about the spirit being and all the rest of it. This is an animal. And even the human component of it is 99% animal and plant. That's why we're like 60% the same as a cucumber and 90% the same as a frog. In a way, I really do believe there's only one DNA strand on the planet. And that's why we have this relationship with all of these different things. And what I've found in people, and people should watch this in their interactions, and I've seen it happen in every interaction between parent and child, between partner and partner, between business and colleague, boss and colleague, everywhere. And it's actually an animal thing. And if we're not aware of it, it keeps us in fight or flight. And that is that when people are being tested, and whether lightly or not, so the animal will bubble up in one of two ways, and that is rising panic. So whenever anybody has the sense of feeling on their back in one way or another, there's rising panic that they will seek to suppress or give into. And the other one is urge to dominate. Urge to dominate. When somebody's on top, the animal will seek to dominate, whereas the human knows when to stop. And what we'll see is you'll see it in people's interactions, you'll see it in conversations, you'll see it in podcasts, you'll see it all over the place. People rising defensively from rising panic or moving for the urge to dominate. And both of these are like animal reactions, and coffee feeds into both of them. Coffee feeds both of them. So people who want to have that sense of I'm in charge, I'm on top of this. Coffee helps support that, when otherwise, if they were left with their true resource, as in what they really felt, how they really felt in themselves, their true level of power, their true level of self-confidence and all the rest of it, they wouldn't do all the things that they're doing, because they get this fake boost to the urge to dominate or the urge of power. But coffee keeps them in the animal realm.
Does it? Okay. Andrena, you got to...
Thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, because you've got alcohol, haven't you? Which is another.
Yeah. So alcohol. So really, all of these things. So this takes us into gender, actually. So really, so I teach from Toltec gender, which views gender as electromagnetism in the human form, where and it governs all relationships in the cosmos. So this is why we have the language of attraction, repulsion, the spark, capacity, resistance, all in relationship. People liking a man who can take charge. This is all electrical language, electromagnetic language. And the feminine in us all is the magnetic. It's the welcoming. It's the inclusive principle. It's the acceptance principle. We all have it in us. And women, this is why you have to deal with attraction or repulsion as your primary thing that you have to deal with around guys, either feeling repulsive and not liking that, or having to deal with guys being attracted to you and them not knowing when to stop. This is the magnetic. And then you have the electrical, which is all about charge. And so men have a charge cycle, just like women have a menstrual cycle. And the women's is governed by the moon, by the lunar cycle, not by the moon itself, but by the lunar cycle. And the man's is governed by the sun. And this is where we get the spring fertility surge from across the animal kingdom. It's where the morning glory comes from, is from the solar movement through the masculine. And what we have in people's feeling is most of people, so the feminine is the acceptance principle, and most modern spirituality is feminine in that it encourages us to accept that which we would otherwise find unacceptable. We can drop into practices that teach us to accept the perfection of the now, and we can feel that and drop into it. It can be real. It can feel perfect as it is right now from the pure feminine principle. But then as soon as we move away from that principle, we can be immediately like, well, I wish kids weren't getting shafted. I wish there was more money in the bank. I wish bombing wasn't happening, all the rest of it. And it's like, well, where was that perfection? It was perfect a moment ago, wasn't it? And this is where the masculine comes in. And the masculine is about the non-acceptance principle, which is about identifying what needs to change. And that's in all of us. So for most people out there, when they are feeling, so when you're feeling sad, angry, overwhelmed, frustrated, hopeless and helpless, all of these feelings are the same in that they are all a desire for the world to be different. I wish it was different. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish you hadn't done that. I wish they weren't doing that. And those feelings are a charge that fills us. And when we were very young and we showed that charge, the anger that we wish it was different, the sadness that we wished it was different, we were told, no, go away with that unskillful feeling and come back when it's gone. And then talk about it. That is the origins of disembodiment in the West, where all of a sudden our real feeling, unskillful though it was unwelcomed. And we were told to talk about how we feel. And so loads of people out there are going on about, oh, well, I told everybody about what I want to change, but it didn't change. And it's like, because they couldn't feel you. It wasn't in your body. They didn't know how you felt. We can all talk about stuff, but it's like, yeah, all right, word wank, basically, just word change. It's not real. Whereas when people feel you, when it's real, when your lips are wobbling and your legs shaking and they know how sad you are and they feel it, then you're going to get change. So the charge for change must move through your body. Otherwise, you will be depressed. You will be suppressed. You will be miserable as a result of compounded non-expression of your truth, which is, I wish it was different. And here's what's wrong. Now, alcohol, drugs, gaming, porn, the football stadium, all of these things, and even to some extent caffeine, they're all to help us manage our suppressed and sequestered charge for change so that we can accept it when otherwise it would eat us alive and we'd probably top ourselves. And in fact, in this country, in the UK, the number one cause of death in men under 50, right? Number one cause, beyond war, beyond disease, beyond anything, number one cause of death is suicide.
Suicide.
Suicide. More men are choosing to end their lives than are being taken out by all forms of natural selection and war and all the rest of it. Now, that is stunning to me. Most people don't care because they're so full of their own stuff, but it's a sign of what happens when we suppress the charge for change so much that it has no space to move whatsoever, no room to move whatsoever. It will eat us alive. And it does eat us alive. And if you don't express it, it's going to turn up as disease and agony in your body because it came to you to move through you to bring the change. But the problem is we often feel unskillful and unpracticed in the truth of our anger and the truth of our sadness and the truth of our helplessness and hopelessness. And so we try and create this image, this self-image of, yeah, I'm on top of this and yeah, this, blah, 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 all the rest of it. But actually it's not the truth and other people can feel it and then the change doesn't happen. And what we're seeing more now is more authenticity, more people being real. That's what I liked about the Better Way conference was people were up there with their lips shaking, their legs twitching, and it's like, yes, there's a human being. Hello, nice to feel your realness rather than the perfection of presentation as if there was no feeling behind it and I'm on top of everything, and it's just so false. But yes, alcohol, drugs, and interesting, if you look at what people say in the football stadium, what do they call the atmosphere? Electric. And it's because that's where men go to vent unskillful charge because they have nowhere else it is welcome.
Yeah.
And that's why, and Osho, in his book From Sex to Superconsciousness, he said, if you don't open the doorway to sexuality, which in men is charge, if you don't open the front door, then it's going to come out the windows. And if you close the windows, it's going to come through the mortar. It's going to come out one way or another. And this is where we see so much sexual distortion and so much sexual problems, is because we have not made a space for unskillful masculinity, for a beginner and masculinity. So what you end up with is everybody having these distorted ways of expressing their charge and then talking about it later. But we wouldn't have these distortions if we were more welcoming. And it's so funny, nobody would expect a baby to be able to run at 6 months old. Nobody. And yet we expect our boys to be tantrum masters at 12 years old. And it's like, and we wonder why. You know, people say, where are all the men gone and all the rest of it? Say, well, why would they turn up? You've blamed them for everything. You've not welcomed them. You've told them to sit down and shut up. And you've told them they're not allowed to be a beginner. So where is the room for them to show up for you? Where, you know, what are they meant to do? And until we can create a child space for masculinity, which is to say, you cannot become skillful with any aspect of being a human. I always use the example of a baby on the mat, because every one of us was that baby. Every one of us was spasming and kicking and pooing and peeing without control. No exceptions. No exceptions. And every one of us took about a year to be able to make this body walk. And every one of us took about 2 years to make it make sounds that could be understood. But here's the thing. Nobody shows you how to move an arm. Nobody shows you. You get to see it done, but you don't know how you move your muscles. And I mean, I always like to get people to lift their arms up and say, you know, lift your arm up and put it down, and lift it up and put it down. And can you tell me how you do that? Can you tell me how? What are you doing? And they get these notes. Oh, well, my signal went from a signal to the brain to the hand. It's like, did it? Is that what you did? Did you send a signal? Is that what you did? You sat there and sent a signal. You said, brain, tell my hand to lift. Because I'm telling you, you're talking crap. You did not do that. You know, you have no idea how you're doing it. But the point is, you can, and that hand that used to spasmically, like, you know, claw your mother when you wanted to caress her, that can now do art and do all of this stuff, it could only do that through enormous trial and error. And that's why we have the saying, no use crying over spilt milk, because the milk will be spilt. You cannot be able to pick up a cup without knocking it over first. So physical dexterity, it's well known that you cannot get physically dexterous without fumbling a bit. It's exactly the same for the emotions and the mind. They behave as chakras, as energy bodies, as bodies. They behave in the same way as the physical body did. So puberty, when our sensuality and our sexuality is moving for the first time, it spasms like the body did. Self-consciousness, arousal, all the unskillful, just moving unfettered. But when you look at the support we got for walking and talking, and you look at the tolerance we gave so that we could become skillful with this hand instead of like this, it took a lot of giving, a lot of tolerance. And until we give this to our children, to young people, over their sensuality and their sexuality, to realize you cannot become the Tantra master, you cannot have this thing move with great depth, skill, and decorum without it going through a bit of this. Until we make room for that tolerance, compassion, understanding in space, then we are doomed to continue to have relationships which are awful and don't go anywhere. We're going to continue to have sexual distortion and abuse and power abuse because we're not opening the front door to the truth. You know? So for me, all of these things, alcohol, drugs, and gaming and sports, specifically target men. They specifically target the collared masculine to say, look, it's a lot of work out there. So you don't have to worry about that difficulty of going and trying to be perfect for that woman, because she could take everything from you if you put one finger wrong. You could be in jail if you lift one finger wrong, young man. But this porn, this is safe. This is available. There's no risk. Why would they choose a real woman under those conditions? No wonder we have a porn pandemic. You know, and the same goes for the rest of it. Why would these men, these boys, be honest about their struggle and their difficulties in a world where the feminine has been made perfect and unassailable? Why would they be honest about their struggles of feeling powerlessness when it's like, nah, suck it up, boy, suck it up? Why would they? No wonder they're turning to the games console, they're shutting down, they're killing themselves because they feel like they have no space for the truth of their experience and their feeling. And so all the women out there, where are all the men? You have closed the door to them. You are the holders of the collar and cuffs and tie. Women are the tie holders these days by demanding, oh, not a perfect man, back on the collar. How dare you? And in a way, to me, the Christ on the cross that we see in the church that's meant to be the king, it's like a feminist symbol because it's meant to be the king in victory up there. And instead, it's a man pinned like this and a crown of thorns with blood coming down. And to me, that is the symbol of, you man, how dare you think that thought? Don't you dare lift a hand motivated by that. Don't you dare take a step. Stay in your place. This is why the men are not turning up, because the boys have got that message. They've got it. How do we turn that around? Well, there's zero welcome in the mainstream world for it. The International Conference on Men's Issues has to keep their venue secret every year until the last minute because there's an international global campaign to get the venue to cancel the event. And they're talking about male suicide, male homelessness, unfairness in the judicial system, male addiction, depression, all these things. Men are not allowed to discuss these things in a public arena. They are told to go to feminist spaces to discuss them, quite literally. So I take my men away. We go to the woods. We go to the edge of the colonized area so that we can create spaces of welcome for each other, honesty for each other, a place where it's okay to be imperfect, a place where it's okay to process your experience in a way that allows you to put that burden of unexpressed charge down and then be able to move forward with greater lightness and a greater trust and connection with other men. But it's a huge issue. This is an enormous issue because until we get the men online, until the men feel welcome, this humanity are not going to win this. We need both the sexes. It took both men and women of all colors to get into this situation. It's going to take men and women of all colors to get us out of this situation.
Hey, you know, music, you see all these talent shows. You never, when it comes to the males, you always hear the countertenor voice and the tenor voice. You never hear the bass profundo or the bass or
Not
the bass
anymore.
baritone or the baritone.
That's right. And
it's all the high register of the male voice. You don't,
It's disembodiment. It's because they're up here. It's up here because they're not comfortable feeling what's in their guts. They're not comfortable feeling what's in their balls. They're not comfortable in the world. And so it's like this performative. Am I all right, mommy and daddy? Am I all right? Is this perfect enough that you're not going to attack me and annihilate me just because I've turned up? And you'll see this in so many men. Voice and breathing up here. Fearful creatures, because they have been told, you get it wrong, you could lose everything, cost you everything. That's a good point. And what we find is really common. One of the number one bits of feedback we get from men from the men's events, the number one bit of feedback is after a week they go, why is my voice deeper? No, honestly, and it'll happen during the process. Why is my voice deeper? Why? And it's because you're at greater ease in your body. You're coming more into your body, and your natural tones, which come from down here, suddenly have a bit of room.
Well, we've gone.
Andrena.
We've gone. Yes.
I do. Yes, there. Yeah, there's the 4 words everybody's got to learn, isn't
it? Oh, we've covered some terrain. Oh, we have meandered.
Well, we've gone way over, but that's not a problem because obviously I've loved hearing your version, especially all about the men and the men's feelings, because obviously we're not aware of this unless you're doing your support groups and that and getting the word out. But so I think I'd like to say, would you come back another time? Because I wanted to talk about the sound and the vowels.
Yeah, sound. Yeah, I'd love to come and talk about the vowels and the sound.
But also definitely. To do with the words and the spells.
Yeah. I would love to come and do a whole spelling thing where we really look into it.
Well, you're wrong.
So
you're
much
wrong.
in that.
But I wanted to know about how you do the vowel sounds differently.
Yes.
So anyway, I'll talk to you about that another time. So I'd love you to come back.
Let's do a native sound. Yeah, let's do native sounds. Yeah, we'll do native sounds when we come back next time. Native communication. That's what it is. Native connection.
Yeah.
sound.
So,
Yes.
but it's been brilliant. I've learned so much from you. So thank you. And is there anything else, Jeff, you want to say?
That's good. Thank you very
No?
much for sharing your knowledge there, Darren.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. And I'm going to apologize because I did actually hit some caffeine myself halfway through there. And so the whole sharing the earth dream came from a caffeine injection that maybe wasn't what I was looking to cover in this show. So I hope it wasn't too all over the place for people, but it was all a very honest share. And I do stand by everything that I said really on all of it. And if anybody wants a little bit more on each of those things, because each of the areas that I've touched upon is a whole thing in its own right that we could probably talk for hours about. So if anyone is interested, you can hassle Andrena to get me back on about it, or you can just reach out to me and contact me through darrendeojee.com. There's a new site going to be going up soon that's going to integrate all of the things we've spoken about. But right now, the only real place you'll get anything is on YouTube if you just search my name, really.
Well, it's been brilliant. And also, I feel it would be good for, speaking for myself, to know more, like working with the men and the men's retreats and all that. Because when I work with the voice, I look at the notes that are missing, and if their partner's notes are strong, are they coming from a needy place or a place of power? So, if we can open up more and share about your men's group, and what we need to do, how we can start making the changes with different things, that would be really welcoming, I think.
Because we really are on the cusp of needing a new paradigm of human relating, and I don't use the word lightly, because what's clear is the old measures and the old ways of judging each other and dealing with each other are not serving, and the evidence is all over the place. I really like what one of my favorite esoteric teachers says about this, and she talks about the 3 spiritual fires. And I think this is really part of what we're seeing happening is us move between them. So there's the electric fire of spirit. There's what she calls the fire by fusion of the soul. And then what's called the fire by friction of the lower self. And in a way, we're moving from this sort of like fire by friction where we resolve our differences through conflict and through whatever else. And that's where we've come from. And we're kind of moving into this new place where we're each in personal fusion, and we meet from a place of personal fusion rather than the friction of rubbing up against each other in different ways. And it's a real different approach to relating. So thank you. I'd love to come on and do that too.
Right. We'll talk about booking you in for another date. So
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Brilliant. Well,
thank you,
everybody,
listeners as well.
We've gone a bit over our time, but I'm sure you've all enjoyed the show, and thank you for listening. And I believe next week we have Michael Lamb coming back on. I'm not sure what we're talking about yet, but we'll keep you posted. So thank you, everybody.
Very good. Andrew, I go get him. Okay. Thank you. It's a good night from him, and it's a good night from her, and good night from them up in the Northern Hemisphere, isn't it? Okay.